Bob Holt joining us from the Democrat-Gazette, an esteemed graduate of the University of Missouri. Bob, I did not think Arkansas would blow out Mizzou on the road because Arkansas's offense has not always traveled on the road this year. The defense has. Mizzou had played fairly well at home this year. I guess there's something in the matchup between these two teams, or was it just a team at Arkansas that was bouncing back after a rough offensive performance against Alabama? How did you see the blowout of Mizzou from your perspective?
Well, I think Arkansas went in there and took it to them early, and I think you're right. Missouri obviously is not a good team. They're 10-15, but they have been a tough out at home. Really, the only team that had blown them out in Columbia was Kentucky, which we all know is a really good team. I think they beat them 83-59, whatever that is. That 24, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they'd beaten Alabama. They'd beaten Ole Miss, who granted Ole Miss is banged up, but they took Auburn. I think the first game Auburn played as the number one team was at Missouri, and Auburn, struggled and won by 1 point. Florida, who's a pretty good team, went in there and lost by 1. Missouri had a lead, frankly, blew that game. Missouri's had their share of blowouts like the Kansas and Illinois and the Arkansas here especially. But I think probably Arkansas did a good job of going in there and kind of taking the fight out of Missouri early. I think when you beat a team by 44, granted that was a month ago or 5 weeks earlier or whatever it was, and that was at your place. But, we've seen through history that the rematch, especially if the team that won big is playing on the road, a lot of times, it's a different story. I mean, I looked it up because I was curious. Well, just even last year, Arkansas went to Alabama, lost by 31. Alabama came here and Arkansas won by 16. That's a 47-point turnaround, in a matter of a couple of weeks. So I think if Missouri could have made that close early, they probably would have gotten some confidence and maybe put a little doubt in Arkansas's mind. But the fact that Arkansas had a 15-0 run, was up 19-4, was up by 19 at halftime, which, according to Hogs stats, is the biggest lead Arkansas has ever had in an SEC road game, which when you think about how good some of these Arkansas teams is, that's a pretty incredible statement to me. And so I think they just took the fight out of Missouri early. And, Missouri fought back and closed, I think, 21-11. But, when a 10-0 run only gets you within 11, that's not very good. And Arkansas reestablished control pretty quickly with a couple of threes from Note and Stanley Amude. And, just not a good effort by Missouri. There wasn't much of a crowd. I read where not all of them, obviously, some of the tickets were $1. And so, you see that and you think, wow, this is a Missouri program, which as recently as last year was ranked in the top 10 during the season at some point and went to the NCAA tournament. So, just not a good showing by Missouri at all. And Arkansas just seems to be a really bad matchup for them, especially Trey Wade. Trey Wade is averaging 2.8 points in 24 other games against Missouri's averaging 14.9.
Wow. Well, maybe they won't end up playing him again, so who knows. But Trey still finds himself in the lineup and getting a lot of minutes, whether he scores or not. He's just one of the things you've started to become accustomed to. I loved how they spread the scoring out. You had 15 two-point shots, 11 threes, 13 free throws. You'd probably like to get to the free throw line a little bit more, but for me, the difference, and Muss even pointed out to it on his, post-game autopsy, that the difference was three-point shooting, and it wasn't just Amude who made 6. Note's 3 out of 5. Devo was 2 out of 3. Devo's shooting the ball better, and for me, it's like this team's already shown, Bob, they don't have to hit threes to win games. They won a game without hitting a 3. But if they hit, 7, 8, 9 threes in a game, I think this team is incredibly difficult to beat if they do have that outside shot.
Yeah, and obviously Amude is finding his stroke from there. And Scotty Bordelin from our staff did a good graphic. He's really good with the analytics and charts and things. And Stanley's sweet spot is that left wing. And, he really varies a lot from there. And, I think, obviously if you're Missouri or anybody, you don't want to, foul a bunch and get in foul trouble and put the other team on the line a lot. But I really think Missouri's lack of fouls early in the game was almost an indictment on their lack of aggressiveness. Yeah. They just didn't get up in Arkansas. Conzo Martin, the Missouri coach, said this. Pickett, who's Missouri's leading scorer, said this. that they just basically let Arkansas do whatever they want to do on offense. So they skip passes, normal passes, whatever Arkansas wanted to do, they did it. And that's the Missouri folks saying that about themselves. And I don't know if you can say a much more of a worse thing about yourself is that you let the other team do whatever they wanted to do on offense. I mean, that's obviously not going to win you any games.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't. I mean, when you're telling yourselves that our game plan didn't work and that we had nothing in reserve that could have stopped them, it doesn't put a good outlook for the rest of the world about your program. And another thing that doesn't put a good perspective of your program is doing a $1 ticket night for a ranked opponent in a conference game. I mean, how far has the Missouri program fallen? I mean, you go back to Mike Anderson before he was here at Arkansas, had a couple tournament teams, had a team in an Elite Eight. I think that was in 2009. I know that one for sure. I mean, is Cuonzo Martin's time in Missouri need to be done to save this program?
That's a good question. You're right. Mike left a really, really good team at Missouri to come to Arkansas. That's how much he wanted to come back to Arkansas, where he'd been a long-time assistant. He left a team that on paper could have gone to the Final Four, and Frank Haith went in there and won National Coach of the Year. They went 31-5 or whatever the heck they were. They lost to Norfolk State in the first round. Just a horrible loss, no offense to Norfolk State. But, yeah, like I said, one thing, when Cuonzo Martin got there, one of the reasons he got the job, he's been a good coach everywhere. He's been Missouri State, Tennessee, Cal. But, Michael Porter and his younger brother, whose first name escapes me, it started with Jonte Porter, they were top recruits. And the feeling was Cuonzo Martin could get them to Missouri, and he did. And Michael Porter ended up being a first-round draft pick, by Denver Nuggets, and he's doing pretty well. But he played like maybe 60 minutes or something his whole Mizzou career. He got hurt in the preseason, and just, everybody knew he was going to be a high pick. Even coming off a bad injury, he was like the 14th pick, I think, in the draft. So, a guy like that, and they still went to the NCAA tournament, a guy like that, he might have taken you to a Final Four. You just don't know. He was, just an incredible talent. And then his brother was as good, not as good, but really good. And then he got hurt the next year. So that's just some really bad luck. You signed two of the top recruits Missouri's had in forever, and they both get hurt, And then, but even like I say, last year they had a solid team. They came in and beat Arkansas here. They were the only team to beat Arkansas here, I think. And then Arkansas returned the favor. They ended up being ranked as high as 10th, kind of struggled at the end, but I had 19 wins. Arkansas beat them again in Nashville, and then Missouri, I think, lost to Oklahoma in the tournament. So they're just 1 year removed from an NCAA tournament bid. And I think, I think Cuonzo Martin is universally respected as a really good coach. He's one of different players. He's tough-minded. He's from East St. Louis, and, St. Louis and East St. Louis are talent-rich areas that Arkansas has not Arkansas, but Missouri has struggled. Probably hadn't recruited as well as they should. There was a feeling he could go in there and recruit better. There was a lot of racial tension on campus, if people remember, protests and the football team protesting. And I think there was a feeling that Cuonzo Martin was a highly respected guy, and obviously a black coach who could come in and repair some damage. So, but you've got a new AD who's come in, and she apparently was with Tennessee when Cuonzo Martin was there. But they hired a new female AD from Nevada, Las Vegas. So we'll see what happens. My guess is, and now he's got a pretty big buyout, my guess is he gets at least another year to try to turn it around. But obviously, Missouri's a pretty good program with a lot of tradition. And, this isn't what people expect, what's going on right now.
And one thing that I think that people are expecting, especially in the national state, is how this team has really turned it around and, kind of had the comparisons of last year and the time frames almost line up perfectly date by date of the winning streak last season leading into the Elite Eight run to what these Hogs have done this year. And big matchup this Saturday, obviously read out, expecting 6 former Razorbacks, current NBA players in the building, expecting a full-on sellout. And like Phil said earlier, Arkansas can win games in different fashions. They can win the slow grit and grind type of defensive battles, and they can win the high-scoring ones. With the matchup against Tennessee, where is this game going to be won? Is it going to be won as a gritty defensive game? Is it going to be won on the boards? Is it going to be won through outside shooting? Where does which area of Arkansas's game needs to come through on Saturday to get the win?
Well, I think it's going to be kind of a grinded-out, gritty, rock fight kind of game because Tennessee's a really good defensive team. They've got a lot of talent. They took it to Kentucky. Of course, Kentucky took it to them in Rupp, and then Tennessee returned the favor the other night, and Knoxville beat them, I think it was 79-63. But if you look at the stats, Tennessee is leading the league, I believe, in scoring defense. They only give up about 62 points a game. Arkansas has been really good defensively during this run. I think in this 11-game stretch where they're 10-1, they've held 9 of those opponents under 40% shooting. And the two teams that shot better than that were Georgia and Alabama, and they didn't shoot a whole lot better than that. They shot in the low 40s, I think. So I think Tennessee's going to come in here, and they're going to, really clamp down defensively. And so I think Arkansas is going to have to play really good defense. My guess is the game will be somewhere in the 70s. I mean, it'd be great to see an up and down, 98-96 or whatever, but I don't see it happening. I don't see either team being able to really, shoot 50% against the other, or, the one thing that could change that is if you get a lot of transition points, live ball turnovers and things like that, or if one team just, gets called for a bunch of fouls, which in the SEC, sometimes those officials will really favor the home team. Obviously, that would be good for Arkansas, but they've got to go back to Knoxville at the end of the season, too, at the end of the regular season. But I think it'll be a tough, grinded out, defensive struggle, probably in the 70s. That would be my guess. I could be wrong, obviously.
Last thing, Bob, where does Devo's resurgence in the last 2-3 games fit into potential long-term success and making a run like last year? Because, he was obviously Devo was one of the most important players on the team when she got into conference last year. He's had an up-and-down season. Lost a starting spot. Looks pretty comfortable as the sixth man. Just because he's not starting doesn't mean he's not going to play 25 to 30 minutes a game like he did against Mizzou. But he just was such an emotional boost for that team last year. I just wonder where you feel this recent resurgence for him could fit in for this team now.
Well, it's been really big. And, he played, 30-plus minutes the other night because Adis Tony got in early foul trouble and just never really recovered. I can't remember how many minutes he played, but it wasn't a lot. And obviously when Devo comes in, they go a little smaller from 6'6" to 6'3", but Devo's a physical guy. He's a really good rebounding guard. He brings a lot of defensive intensity just like Tony does. And so, it's been big because, it's funny, Devo was a starter for like the last 14 games last year, and he really emerged in that late run they had, and then he was very big in their NCAA tournament run. Hit the game-winning shot against Oral Roberts. Just had a lot of big plays. And then this year he started off as a starter, and then he had some good games. Like one of their worst games of the year was Oklahoma. They got blown up by 22, but he had 26, which goes to show you just because somebody has a big game doesn't necessarily work good for the team. Or the team's going to play well as a whole. But then when Eric decided to go a little bigger and more physical, Devo started coming off the bench, and he's really adapted to that well. He's playing a lot of minutes. He's probably playing as much, in some cases, more than if he was starting. He seems to have accepted that, which obviously is good. And he's the thing I like about it is he's obviously scoring in transition and going hard to the cup and all that. But he's also hitting some good jump shots. He hit a big jump shot. When they beat Mississippi State. It wasn't a three. Sometimes you think, man, just back up just hit a three out of it. But he's hit some big threes in recent games, and so he's bringing a lot of good energy, and he's bringing a jump shot too, which I think is really big for him.
Certainly for this team that was lacking a little bit of jump shooting, it's a good thing to
Might
see.
be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pros and college hoops. For all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all your sports betting needs. Head over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Use our promo code BELIEVE to get started. That's promo code BLEAV. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage, is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts.